Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. In today's episode, we need to talk about this basement because as I mentioned in yesterday's episode, we are reaching the point where, yes, we have a little bit of space in some of these chests, but the others are starting to reach capacity. I have so much tuff from clearing out that huge iron vein. I have a bunch of deep slate in both of these chests just from digging underground, and I'm outgrowing the storage system that we built down here in the basement. There may be a couple of chests in here that we could use for something, but generally speaking, this whole area does not have much room for expansion once we start to acquire much larger amounts of stuff. And I'm having to cram all of the different stone types into a single chest, which is never a good idea because there are so many different types of stone in the game. I think it's time for an upgrade, and so today we're going to build a brand new storage area. I've been trying to figure out exactly where that's going to go, because it would make sense to have it down here with some of our farms. We've got our new cactus farm, there's sugarcane, there's honey and other bee products, there's iron over there, there's wool over here. It would make sense to have it somewhere relatively central. But I'm also thinking about what I want to do with the overall look of this area, and I don't want it to feel too crowded. We have a lot of space to work with here, and my eyes have been turning towards this hill over here and thinking, what can we do with that? Any structure that we build up there is going to be plainly visible from everywhere around here, and I think it's up there that I want to build my storage system. The other option would be having a bridge across this kind of ravine, I call it a ravine, this kind of like gully behind the house, and maybe having a storage building over there. But the ground over there is not the best for building. It's kind of sloping away instead of sloping towards this area. So I actually think we're going to go and build a storage area up here on this hill today. And that's going to give us a chance to talk about how redstone can assist us with storage and automatically filter items into different chests for us. But the first thing I want to do is head up onto this hill, clear out a bunch of the trees, and figure out a space where our storage building is going to go. And I think we're going to start here. About halfway up the hill, roughly speaking, there is this kind of flat divot of ground here where the hill has just shaped itself around this natural flat area. And I think we're probably going to start building a storage area here because it will stick out from the hill enough that we can see it from the front door of our house over there, and we can probably just tuck it in here, digging into the hill if we want to, so that we can carve out a little bit of space. There's also kind of a gully behind here that I've lit up so that skeletons don't come out and shoot me while I'm working on my storage system, but I think this is going to be a large enough area to give this a go. And we will need a little bit of room for redstone circuits in here, because much like the bee farm that we set up the other day, this is going to rely quite heavily on there being enough room for redstone circuitry. So with that in mind, we're probably going to lay down a floor, and then we're going to build the insides of this storage house before we build the exterior, because that way we'll know that we've got the perfect amount of space for what we want to do. And I'm wondering if we maybe start with a stripped birch floor. Yeah, I kind of like that. It's got potential. But before we continue with that, let's talk about what you actually came here for, which is item filter circuits. So first of all, we're going to build the circuit that we're going to be using for the majority of this video, the foolproof item filter circuit that I believe was pioneered by Impulse SV. So big shout out to Impulse for having put in the work and figured out that this is the most effective item filter we can build if we want to build a compact automatic sorting system. The requirements for building this are actually fairly slim in terms of redstone components. Each circuit will need some kind of output chest. We're going to use a double chest for this example. You'll need 2 hoppers, a comparator, a redstone repeater, 3 redstone dust, and a redstone torch, along with a decent handful of building blocks. First of all, we're going to put our output here, and of course, a hopper will need to go facing down into that, which is going to deliver all of the items to the chest itself. Next to that hopper, we're going to place a solid block, and on top of that, we're going to place a comparator. The comparator is going to be reading the contents of our second hopper, which we're going to place facing into the comparator. It doesn't technically need to be facing into the comparator, but if it faced to either side, it would be transferring items to hoppers on either side of it. The most important thing is that it doesn't face down, because then it would push items downwards into this hopper, even when that hopper was locked, which is what we're going to do right now. We're going to place another block here, and on this side, we're going to place a redstone torch. This is going to power this solid block above it, which will actually lock the hopper here. So if I put items in this hopper right now, it's not going to drain them out into the chest because the hopper has been locked by redstone power. What's going to unlock it is enough items being in this top hopper, so we want to make sure this comparator will output a redstone signal that's going to reach this redstone torch and switch it off, allowing items to flow through the system. To do that, we place 2 blocks along here and 1 block down at a diagonal. We're going to place our 3 redstone dust along the top of these blocks, and we're going to finish off the circuit with a redstone repeater there. Now, naturally, when you build this circuit, you're probably going to want to have that repeater on some sort of solid block that you can recognize if you're still digging around in this area, but this is our circuit complete. 1 comparator, 3 redstone dust, 1 repeater into this block with a redstone torch there, powering and locking this hopper. Grabbing some items from a nearby chest, I'll be able to show you how this works. We're going to place 4 items in the last 4 slots of this hopper, and the first slot is reserved for the item we want to filter. In this case, I've got a stack of sand from our concrete gathering the other day. I'm going to place that in the front slot of this hopper, and you'll notice that the items start to slowly drain away. And they will do that until the stack reaches 41 items, at which point the redstone torch here turns back on and that hopper locks. There will be 1 block of sand left in here when it locks, so in total 42 blocks are going to be tied up in this item filter system. The remainder of that stack gets filtered down into this chest where we have 22 sand waiting for us. And so the most important feature of this circuit is that now anything we throw on top of this hopper is not going to end up getting pulled through the hopper into the chests, because it will only accept the item that is in this first slot and any of the other items that are in here. If we threw any more coarse dirt in here, then the filter would be in trouble. Which is why you will typically find people using renamed items in order to fill up those filters. Because if I rename this netherrack, for example, filter junk, and I'll get another stack of netherrack just for demonstration purposes, if we fill our 4 slots of this hopper with our filter junk netherrack, and then I try and throw some of the unnamed netherrack into the hopper, that's not going to work either, because the game won't recognize them as the same item once those items there have been renamed. If I throw any more of the filter junk items in there, you'll see they disappear instantly and they start to fill up the remaining slots of the filter, draining a few more items out of this first slot. So I mentioned that this circuit drains the items in this hopper down until there are 41 left in here and 1 extra in this spot. And so you may be thinking, wait a second, why are we leaving so many items here in the filter? Why can we just not add more items on this side and allow everything that we put in here to filter down into the chest? Let me explain. These filters are designed to be built side by side so that we can build basically exactly the same filter circuit right here. We're going to put a repeater there, we're going to put our torch there, we'll put our output chest here with the 2 hoppers configured as before, 3 redstone dust on the top of this, and you'll notice all of the redstone dust connects to each other, so that even though we don't have any items powering this redstone comparator because there are no items in our hopper here yet, the signal from the circuit that's built on top of smooth stone blocks is technically adding some power to the circuit that's made out of dark oak blocks. Right now it's only powering 1 redstone dust from this line though, because the comparator is not producing a powerful enough signal to power any more than that. And if we wanted to, we could fill this hopper here with our filter junk, we could put in, say, our valuable diamonds, and those could start to filter down into the next door chest. While the diamonds are doing that, you'll notice that this filter circuit completely lights up all the way to the end, where it's activating this redstone repeater, which is switching off the redstone torch and allowing that hopper to be unlocked. But it's only activating this half of the circuit. It's not activating the other half, and that comes down to the comparator outputting a signal strength of 3. This side of the circuit needs 1, 2, 3 redstone power to activate, but to activate the neighboring circuit, it would need 4. So it's safe to build this circuit side by side without them activating each other. That changes when you insert more items into the filter here, because the comparator will output a redstone signal of 3 when there are more than 45 items here in the hopper. So there's 44 with all of the filter junk here, and a 1 with that additional diamond. Once that number goes any higher, that's when the comparator outputs a signal strength of 3, which activates the circuit and allows the items to drain out of that hopper. But what happens if an entire stack of items somehow gets in? That makes the comparator output a stronger redstone signal, which will actually activate the circuit next door. You'll notice that both of these redstone repeaters are now powered, even though I don't have anything going into this neighboring hopper, and that's actually draining all of the sand out of this hopper. If that happens a second time, then this hopper drains entirely, and then whatever junk we've got coming in here, whatever items end up flowing through this circuit, are going to end up draining through this hopper regardless. It basically breaks the filter entirely, meaning that any items that go through the system end up in this chest. Now, typically, when you add items to an automatic storage system, you're going to be adding them in one at a time, either through a chain of hoppers that's going to travel across all of these hoppers, allowing them to pull out any items that match what's in their filters, or you're going to have a stream of water flowing across the top, and the items are going to be flowing in that water stream and being delivered to all of the hoppers one at a time. So a lot of the time, you're not going to have an entire stack of items going through here at once. So in those circumstances, it might be okay to increase the amount of filter junk so that you can end up with more items flowing through the system. But that doesn't account for when this chest ends up getting full. And let's take the diamonds out here as an example. Let's fill up this entire chest with single blocks of netherrack. And let's say the input hopper is full up of full stacks of that item as well. Assume this is all the same item for the purposes of this demonstration. If we have a bunch of our filter junk items in here and we put in some more items, those items have nowhere to go because the hopper and the chest below it are completely full of items, and it's going to switch off this circuit permanently, which completely damages the circuit next to it. All of those items end up draining back into the chest, and the same thing happens. And with a full stack of items in here, it's not just powering the circuit next door and potentially the circuit on the opposite side if we're building all of these side by side. The power will actually get to one circuit further over as well. So we end up breaking 5 filters in this area just because one item filter ends up getting full. The entire system would end up breaking just because you wanted to make sure all of your diamonds ended up in a chest instead of stuck in a hopper chain. So honestly, the best advice I can give is don't use these for valuable materials. Use them for the kind of things you acquire in bulk. Use them for the stuff that you can afford to lose half a stack of items in the filter. Use them for things like sand and gravel. Use them for stone. Use them for deep slate, use them for tough. All of that stuff that we have in bulk in our storage system right now could go in a filter circuit like this, and we wouldn't miss 40 or so blocks that are going to be tied up in the filter system. Alternatively, don't leave your item filters side by side. If you build a 1-block gap between them, then the redstone can't possibly affect what's happening on the circuit next door, and you can filter your diamonds this way if you want to. In fact, if you wanted to, you could even save on the amount of items that you put in here by using items that only stack to 16, like signs or chicken eggs or ender pearls, whatever you've got handy. If you put 11 of these items in here, because they effectively count as 4 items each because of only stacking to 16, those items can occupy the remainder of your filter while allowing the items in the first slot to filter down to just 1 item. And then once again, only 2 diamonds end up in the system. But you need to make sure that these filters are built 1 block apart, or the filters on the side risk being drained when you end up putting some extra diamonds in here. These single module item filters can even be reconfigured to use 1 fewer redstone dust. So we're going to set up our chest here, we're going to redirect the hopper into the chest that way. We're going to move this redstone torch to underneath this hopper so it will still lock it from below. And once the wandering trader and his llamas get out of the way, we can actually remove these last few blocks here, put the redstone repeater there, put 1 block there, and we've used 1 fewer redstone dust to create an item filter that does exactly the same thing. Only in this one, the comparator only needs to reach a signal strength of 2 to activate the circuit, so we end up with even fewer items being stashed in the chest. This does, of course, mean that it's a disaster placing these item filter circuits side by side, because if we put in a whole stack of items, even with 1 set of filter junk in there, that's still going to power the circuit next door because the comparator is reaching a signal strength of 3, which is going to activate the circuit next to it. So if you're just filtering a single item and you don't want to build these circuits side by side, then this is actually a slightly better item filter circuit. But if you're building these for bulk storage like we are, and you want to have the filter circuits built side by side to compact them into a smaller space, then this circuit is basically foolproof as long as you keep 41 of the filtered item in the first slot of the hopper. I hope that made sense, because we're about to build a lot of these. Up here in our little divot on the side of the hill, we're going to build a storage system that's going to have a bunch of these circuits in. So I need to do a bit more clearing out of the hill. We're going to lay down a bunch of circuits, and I'll bring you back to explain how the sorting system is going to work. Hey folks, welcome back. So I have been busy. We have a whole bunch of our storage system all set up. And right now, the bones are in place. Of course, we have a lot more decorating to do because right now it's just 2 big wooden pillars and then all of the redstone workings exposed to the open air. But that's really so I can show you all of this in process so that you can see a little bit more of what's going on here, but we don't have to build every single item filter circuit on camera because you kind of get the idea after one or two. Hopefully you have the idea just from what I showed you earlier in the video, but if we look down the line here, you will see almost stretching into infinity, row upon row of repeaters and all of the redstone for these circuits side by side, all working in tandem. Attached to each of our item filters, we have not one, not two, but 3 storage chests, and the main reason for that is that a double chest of cobblestone fills up pretty quickly if you go mining. In fact, through just the amount of mining we did on that huge iron vein, I have more than a double chest of tuff. Don't forget that this also includes tuff all through the hopper behind it, so that's all filled up as well. A few extra storage spaces per chest, and we're already eating into the second one. So if I went mining for any more of that stuff, you better believe it would build up in the system pretty quickly. And once again, that is why overflow protection ends up being pretty useful. So the way I've laid out this whole thing kind of has a system of sorts to it. For a start, I'm cutting down on the amount of signs or item frames or anything like that we would have to do by putting a couple of the blocks that are assigned to each of these chests on the ground in front of the chests so that you know what is in which chest. And there are 16 modules on each side. This side over here is the kind of stuff that we find on the surface in the overworld. So it's all 6 wood types. I decided to put the nether wood types here as well, simply because it made sense to have all of the different types of wood together. And then we have grass, moss, dirt, coarse dirt, sand, gravel, podzol, and there is a space here for something we don't have yet, because I have yet to locate a mushroom island biome where we'd get our last dirt type, mycelium. And yes, there are dirt paths, but you can't get those by silk touching them in Java Edition. I believe you can in Bedrock Edition, but that's something that we're not used to in Java. So dirt path doesn't appear here, farmland obviously doesn't appear here, and there are a couple of other bits and pieces that we could put in here. For right now, it's kind of useful to have a place to store glass, because at the moment this system does not have a place to auto-sort that. But the idea is this side is a little bit more of the organic stuff, with the exception maybe of sand and gravel, whereas over here, this is more the mineral side of things. My build chest is still here with a bunch of the redstone components in, but this is cobblestone, stone brick, which you can just about see, and we can find it there in the chest. All of the decorative stone types up to tuff, and then we've got deep slate, cobbled deep slate primarily, because we're going to be putting the remainder of the deep slate somewhere else. We've got basalt and blackstone and netherrack from the nether, the 3 blocks you find in geodes, and then finally here at the end, clay and terracotta. Clay because we get it in larger quantities from lush caves, and terracotta because we'll want a whole bunch of the raw stuff to transform into the other colors. Now the reason I have a row of barrels here is so that we can take all of the crafted materials from these different types of materials. Say for example we want these oak logs to turn into stairs or whatever, but we figure we've got enough stairs and we need to put some of those away. Those can now go in this barrel above here, and if we wanted to, we could even add another barrel on top of that if one barrel isn't enough to store all of the variants of oak things that we would make. But most of the time, I just want to pull out some logs and make as many things as I need to. I'm not scrounging in chests to see if I have the right amount of stairs or slabs or whatever for a project. And that can go for all of the different wood types. I don't know if we're going to just use this for overstock with grass, or if we'll put like tall grass and ferns and those kinds of things in here above that. But obviously moss comes with moss carpet, and maybe even some azalea saplings. We could put those in there as well. Again, with the dirt and coarse dirt, I'm not entirely certain. Maybe we'd put some extra gravel in there so that we could mix that to make more coarse dirt if we wanted to. With sand, I don't think we're going to store sandstone in here because that probably deserves a chest all of its own, but we don't have a massive supply of sandstone unless we go out and mine a big desert, so we don't need to worry too much about that. Might put the flint in here with the gravel, and the podzol and mycelium might have some of their own stuff that we'll get onto a little bit later. Likewise, there are some things on this side which are obvious and not so obvious. There's a ton of stuff we can craft out of cobblestone, and less stuff that we can craft out of natural stone, although there's still some stairs and slabs. Smooth basalt has basically no crafting recipes whatsoever. It is one inert block, but it is a block we find in natural generation alongside the geodes, so if we go and excavate a bunch of geodes, we're going to come away with quite a lot of that, but we can't do much else with except store it. Meanwhile, this barrel alone is not going to be enough to contain all of the colored terracotta and glazed terracotta variants, so we're probably going to store those somewhere else. And the way all of these items get to each of these chests is via the item filter circuit supplied by this chain of hoppers that goes all the way around the outside of the room and ends up over here. And if you wanted to know why we built an iron farm that early in the series, it was really for projects like this, because having automatically sorted storage is one of those quality of life things that you will thank yourself for doing later. This chest here, which I will make a more accessible way of getting to, but right now we kind of have to jump up and grab from ground level, is what we input the items into, and then one by one, slowly but surely, they make their way around this entire ring of hoppers, and each time an item makes its way round to the appropriate filter circuit, say the dirt here, for example, let's throw some dirt in halfway along the hopper chain, and we'll see it all start to filter down into this chest in particular. You'll notice that one at a time, those items drip on through. There's a steady stream of them coming through this chest, and the dirt chest here starts to fill up. Let's grab a couple of items from these chests just to show you those coming in. We'll take like a decent amount of the cobbled deep slate. We'll grab the remainder of the netherrack that's in here. We'll take some gravel from over here, and just for good measure, a little bit of dark oak wood, because I've been working with a lot of that. If we put all of that into our input chest here, that's the gravel, the cobbled deep slate, the dark oak log, and the netherrack, let's say we also put in the stone that we've got on us, and for good measure, we're going to throw in these bookshelves, which don't actually have an item filter in the system, so we'll see what happens to those. In the meantime, though, the gravel is making its way around this chain of hoppers, and if we walk over to the gravel chest, we can see it's started to make its way into the system, and it's not ending up in any of the neighboring chests. All the gravel should end up in here. I believe the deep slate was next. That's making its way in here as well, and then sooner or later, we'll see a little bit of stone drifting into this chest as well. It's going to take a minute for the dark oak logs to show up, because the system does have to process all of the other items one at a time before it gets to these. But there they are. The dark oak logs are finally making their way back into the system. And now the bookshelves are making their way around here, and the system will obviously reject the bookshelves because they don't appear in any of these item filters. So they end up going to the end of the line where they would get stuck in that hopper, except I've created a down pipe of hoppers that ends up right here, and you can see the bookshelves haven't ended up getting caught in any of the other item filters. They're all making their way down here, where the plan is to continue this down towards a second area of the storage system, which is going to be reserved for manual sorting. And down here, I've started carving out an area that's going to act like a little storage cubby for everything else in the game, which isn't one of the materials that we're filtering up there or any of its products, like, you know, spruce signs and stuff like that are all going to be up there. Everything else is going to be down here. And to make sure that we have enough space, I'm going to put a couple of double chests in here. We're going to break out that dirt block there and make sure this chest ends up connecting. We'll have a final hopper going into there, and if we put any items that aren't compatible with our storage filters in the system, they'll just end up filtering down into this chest where we can extract them and sort them into all of the shelves that we've put up down here. I am going to come up with a sort of system that's going to work down here for where everything goes, but as of right now, I just thought we could come up with a more creative design for a storage room. So we've got barrels here, we've got double chests in two different orientations, so these are double chests that just reach back a block into this alcove here, and we've got a couple of more interesting looking shelves at the end with barrels and chests and various other bits and pieces, which I'll have to make sure that we have enough headroom or like a non-solid block above them so that those chests can still open. Maybe I'll color code the walls behind here, and maybe we could even sort items by color instead of by category of items, but either way, whatever we end up with, we're going to end up with a lot of storage space down here for all of the stuff that doesn't necessarily fit into the filters above. We are going to be storing all of the precious materials down here as well, since they aren't filtered above, so we'll put all of the iron blocks and the diamonds and the redstone and all of the ores and things like that down here as well, probably on this side, while all of the crafted materials and all of the other bits and pieces go on this left-hand side. So we'll develop a bit of a system as we go, and then that way, as we're coming up the hill from the spawn area, we can either go up into the main bulk storage where a lot of the main blocks are, or we can take this other path down towards the basement where we're going to be gathering all of the more specialized stuff. Ultimately, the most important thing about setting up a storage system is that it works for you and that you know exactly what you want out of it. Personally, I think this is going to work as a pretty decent system for me, but feel free to experiment if you want to come up with your own take on an auto sorting system. It's probably worth bearing in mind, though, that there are over 1,000 different items in Minecraft, and there's some that you won't really get a huge amount of. So I figured there's no point in making a different sorting module for oak, stripped oak, oak stairs, oak slabs, oak planks, oak buttons, oak signs, you know, all of the different kind of stuff that we're probably only going to be crafting it as we need it. Instead, having one chest here for oak logs and a barrel for all of the miscellaneous items kind of covers each of those categories. What we have done, however, is left ourselves a little bit of room for expansion, because all we need to do is carve into the hill a little bit further. Even if we end up building something around this, the storage system can continue back into the hill. And if it came to it, we could even hang a couple more storage filters off of this and have the back wall included in part of the chest setup here. So there's lots of different options here. We could add to the hopper chain here. We could expand it into the hill that way. We could just stick with what we've got and be happy manually sorting the rest. But hopefully this episode has opened your eyes to the possibilities of auto-sorted storage. I do think even if you're not a redstone person, this is one of those things that you need to have in your back pocket, because even as a builder, it will make your life a whole lot better. And we're going to be decorating this here and there, so you might see a few different iterations of it popping up in future episodes. But folks, that is where we're going to leave it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you've taken a look at this auto-sorting system with me and hopefully found it a little bit easier to understand. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.